Welcome back to Firepower and Firepower Threat Defense. In this section, we're going to finish up our network analysis. Very important section. Let's go run out and take a look. Okay, where we left off, we went to fix any health issues we didn't have any to fix. Looked at dashboard for a minute. Context Explorer, connection events. We did table view, switch workflow, security intelligence. And now, one of the things that takes the most work really is the network analysis. Analysis of intrusion events. First thing you want to do is look at the snort ID. And if it's a low number, then I'm not going to be as worried about it as if it's a newer number in the 40,000 range, 45,000. And we're in the high 40,000 range on snort right now. So, if you're down into you're looking at something and it's 9,000 or something, you're not going to be worried about it as much as something that's 43,000. Okay. Then again, we'll see our CNCs, people going out and that's user education. We want to find out the action of what did our intrusion, our IPS policy do. I'm going to look at the documentation and then decide on the action. All right, so here's where we left off. I want to come here to analysis, intrusion events. We're not going to see as many as we're going to see on the dCloud, right? They're real good at triggering some of this stuff. And so if I come back here and look, and let's go through these. One of the things I only have, it looks like CNC stuff. So I'm going to look at this. None of these numbers are that low where I would just ignore them. 28, 29,000, they're still years old, but they're still very valid. I mean, I did go out to these sites. There still are CNC. If you were watching where I was configuring IPS, I did do these. But one of the things we want to do is we're going to come over here and let's say that we don't know what these are. Again, I do, but we come in, we got to look at these, and I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and it's going to tell us the inline result. Now, that's very interesting, isn't it? Because all my IPS policies don't drop in line. I have that off right now. However, except for my very first rule in my access control policy, I use the Cisco bound security and connectivity because I wanted to drop my CNCs. But if you see something like this, impact 1, high priority, source IP, there's nothing I can blacklist here. It's going to my DNS server. It's coming from here. It never even makes it to the server because I kill it on its way out knowing it's a CNC. I can't blacklist anything here, right? So let's take a look. I can click here pretty much anywhere on the screen. And I can say generate events, make this a generate event instead of a drop. Because a lot of times I come here and go, oh, I see. I don't need that as a drop rule. I'd like to know if I see something on this, but there's no reason to drop it. Well, that's not true with this one. I definitely want to drop it. Now, I could get to a point where I go out to customers. It's not something they ever use. It triggered, and I'll just disable the rule because it affects the customer zero. I could threshold or suppress it, as we learned in the IPS policy. We could look at the documentation. Sure, let's do that. It's going to open up a new screen for me, and we're going to understand that this is going to say things. The first thing we look at is false positives, false negatives when we look at an IPS and see there's nothing wrong. So you can see right here, look under content in a rule. First off, this is alert, UDP, right? Coming from home net, any source port going to any destination IP with a destination port of 53. We caught that. It never even left our FTD box, right? And what are we looking for in here? This is the hex version of it, but chickenkiller.com, right? And there it is in hex. That's what we're looking for. And I found it. And it was gone. I'm going to close this. This one's pretty darn simple. Now, I want to do something like this. I would come in here, and let's say I didn't really understand this. I need to look a little bit further. I'm going to dig down into the packets. And let me make sure while that's looking in there that yep, good. That's what we're going to do next. That was my dCloud. I want to make sure it was coming up. So the source IP here and destination, the first thing I notice is I can't blacklist any of this stuff. No way, no how, right? And so I'm going to look in here because a lot of times destination port or it came from a bad source, I would right click who is, find out what it is, what kind of problem. In this case, I really can't take much action, right? There's not even much here to do. In this case here, it's a pretty straightforward by far on what it is and that we want it to be dropped. At this point, it becomes user education, doesn't it? Bob, why are you going to chickenkiller.com? Mention that. Now, once I do something, guys, we got to do something in here. On that case, I'm going to call the user. All three of these are the same. I don't need to do any of these anymore. All three of them would be handled the same way. Find out who did them and ask them why they did that. At this point, that's all I can do. I could download the packets and it would open in Wireshark. That's what this does. But in this case, remember, packets are transferred to the FMC. So if you have an IPS event, all the packets are transferred to your FMC for network analysis, right? This is good, right? So we didn't have much packets in this case, but it depends on what you're doing. In this case here, I'm not going to change anything. These are all blocked. I'm just going to mark those as reviewed and leave that down and send that to the help desk for user education. That one being said, easy peasy. You hope you have a day like that. More likely, you're going to run into something like this. Oh boy. And you remember the numbers I told you about, 38, here's one 648, 1394. These are false. I don't think they're false positives because they actually triggered them. It might not even be important for my network. So, these maybe I disable the rule, or maybe I just threshold them so I don't see them unless there's a ton of them, over 100, something like that. I would look and decide. But I want to understand something like this one. Here's 44, right? We'll look for, here's one at 42. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. So here's what you have to do when you see something like this. I'm going to take this one serious. FTP easy file share and FTP server directory traversal attempt. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here, concerned, it's a high number. And I'm going to click on something like this. Now I've seen someone with low numbers. I'm like, oh gosh, that's Windows NT. You guys don't have any of that. Like, well, down in the warehouse, we still have an old, Windows 98 machine, and you'd be surprised, right? So you gotta be careful. Anyways, on this case here, this was dropped, right? It would be light gray if it wasn't dropped. It would say would have dropped. And that's what we would see on most of the ones on mine because I don't have the drop one line on. Impact 3, it looks pretty bad. Chances are we might just blacklist this guy, but let's find out more about this attack. And the way that I do it, and I can click it pretty much anywhere in here, is the rule documentation, of course. Hopefully there is some. It's somewhat of a newer rule, 44,000. But let's find out. Give this a second to run. And here's our problem right here, right? And there's really not much documentation, none, other than it says we don't have any false positives. So nothing's been really written up about it, all right? So content within 20, it's looking for this right here, right? So you might be able to look more into this, but to me, this looks really bad. I would leave this as a drop and I wouldn't change that at all. So let's go and look at packets and find out what is this guy and why did we get this? Nothing fast about network analysis with IPS. Okay. Attempted administrator privilege gain. This may or may not have been the case, but nonetheless, they found what they were looking for inside these packets, right? So it tells us what rule. This is kind of nice. What's the rule that triggered it? So we have the name there. And in this case here, came from, it looks like inside to outside. Let me see if I can do who is from here. At this point here, I'd be looking at blacklisting this host and doing security over connectivity. And probably one of the other things that I could do is send someone to that host. I probably can't blacklist this guy, right? It's going to AT&T. So, I mean, maybe, kind of depends, blacklist it and see who calls, right? If you're lonely, if no one's giving you any attention, I'm not sure that blacklisting this one is the solution. Possibly, I would probably look further into what that is. But more likely in this case here, I think I might choose to find out who this is and see if I can resolve that on my network onto who this is and go out there and find out what this program is that's trying to get outside and get to this bad location. That's probably what I'm going to do in this case. I'm not sure I'm going to blacklist AT&T. Comcast, yes, but AT&T, no. You guys might switch that one around. Notice I could do thresholding on this one, right? And we could suppress the source and stuff like that, never suppress a rule. And then, of course, here's my attacks, actually. If we look down here, should actually see it right here, right? So in this case here, I'm probably going to call, I'm not going to change this rule. In other words, I'm not going to disable the rule. I'm not going to make it a alert only rule. I think what I would do in this case to start, just to start, I might do some more, is find out who that is and go out there and find out why it was coming from there. I think that's a good solution for this. You know, there's never always a perfect answer on these, right? There's just not. So one of the things is you got to kind of, you know, test it. This is why doing these every day, you're going to get really good at it, right? We're going to understand how to use these. So let's see if we can find one more high one here. I think this one's not bad at 17,000. Not at, you know, we see some other ones here. By the way, I know we haven't done the network analysis policy, but if it starts in 100, then that's a preprocessor. It talks about how we put the files back together so we can understand that it's coming from, so for example, Windows 10 to Server 2012, whatever, we got to understand how the files are built and we're segmented. Okay, let's look at this one. So the first thing I'm going to do is come over here and look and click down and see if it dropped it, or if it was just an alert rule, or if it hit a rule with an IPS policy that was don't drop in line, wasn't set. Once I get all this done, guys, and I do this for a while, I'm going to go back to my IPS policy and drop all in line, because you know that it's not if you've been following along. Again, here's your problem, inside to inside, right? Somewhere both within our network. In this case here, I'm going to find out who the source is. Let's go here right away and do documentation. So I haven't had any fun yet. I haven't been blacklisting hosts. That's always the easiest way to solve these. I'm going to blacklist the source and mark it as resolved, right? In this case here, we're looking at, you know, user education, or going finding a Trojan that's sitting on someone's host. Well, check out this. We definitely, because it is an older rule, right? 10 years old probably to have to look at it. But so it's an SMB v3. You might not be running that. Definitely a denial of service. So nicely, you've got bug track information, references, and so on. It's very simple, no false positives, but the affected systems are Juniper. Maybe you don't even run that. So maybe we disable this rule. Actually, probably if I say, you know, I'm not going to worry about this rule. This is a really good example. We don't have any Juniper whatsoever anywhere, because we're not going to be able, so nothing's going to happen to us. You know, this is one of those things where I say, I'm going to make this a generate event instead of drop. Or actually, that's not what I would do. I'm going to keep it as a drop. Let me do it like this again and come back here. Why would I not want to drop this? Of course I'd want to drop it. But one of the things that I would do, why wouldn't I threshold it, right? Say, only tell me when you get a ton of these so I can, you know, see what's going on or why this is doing it. Something on the inside here, though, still needs to be looked at. If this is coming from the outside in, leave this as dropped. I don't have a problem with that. Basically, I would let it go and just start thresholding, because it's dropping it, no one's calling, and it's Juniper. Again, God, it's kind of, you know, you have to decide what to do on a case-by-case basis. So it definitely takes some effort. Now you have to go through here, and you have to go through all of these till all of these are fixed, or you have something that you're doing, some sort of action. You don't just leave them, right? So unfortunately, I'll come in and, you know, customer will call me, and I'll look in and I'll see, you know, thousands of events over a period of time, you know, and I'll kind of, you know, give them a hard time or whatever. And the next time I call, they call and I go in there, I'll go into reviewed events and I'll see that they just put 1,000 in there right before they knew I was going to log in or something, right? Because they knew I'd bitch at them about not going through their events. Anyways, so on this one here, I'm going to click on this. Let's look at this one. This is a client hello attempt, SSL v2, corporate policy violation. There's only one. Let's just take a quick look at it, though. Again, we have to look through all these. There's a Novell one in there. So this one didn't get dropped. Now, there's two reasons this wouldn't have been dropped. One, it hit a rule that didn't have drop in line. Secondly, if it hit a rule that had drop in line, the whole file, you know, wasn't defragmented, right? In other words, they weren't able to get the whole thing together, so it didn't get it. So it couldn't drop it. It couldn't make a complete analysis of it. Again, you got some issues here on how you're going to deal with this. You know, it's not coming from it's not a black and white, I should say, on the sense coming from the outside. It's coming from Russia. It's really bad. Blacklist it, mark it as reviewed. Those are the easy ones. Something like this takes a little bit more effort and work, doesn't it? So, so there's some fun stuff out here. And again, now even on that Novell one, which I've looked at before, you're sending someone to that client because they're running some sort of Novell program on there. It's being dropped. I don't care, but maybe we just don't leave something like that alone. And we got the same thing here, right? So find out what is this guy and what is he doing. So it's a case by case basis, guys. It's never easy to say if you see this, do this. Some of them are easy coming from the outside in and they're bad, and we know we can just blacklist them. We go out to who is and find out it's not, it's not an ISP, it's not Akamai or something like that. Then, we'll blacklist it and see if some application stops working. It happens that way. Let's look at one more thing in here. I really like this one. This is my malware events. Let me see if I can do it from here on mine. I'm not going to get as good of ones as they have here. But so let's let that run. Notice these are all the SHAs, right? So it's saying these are events. However, I don't believe these were blocked because they didn't come back as malware. They came back as clean. And we can click on this and see what host is on their trajectory. What I really want to find in here is one that actually has a disposition of malware, which it doesn't look like I'm going to get on here. So because the reason why I wanted to show you how it downloads and what it looks like when it downloads and how to send it up. So all these are come back as unknown. You see it like this a lot. You see it like this a lot where most of them are unknown and then they change the disposition. Retrospective analysis, right? Where it changes, it comes back and updates my database, right? So if I look in here, these will eventually change. This is real life going out there to the AMP Cloud. The AMP Cloud has not made a decision on what these are, and maybe it won't. Maybe we need to send them up to Talos or something like that, right? So we could do a couple things. I can't download the file. I can't analyze it because there was no file, right? We didn't get the file. We said only download malware, right? So this is going to hurt our network analysis on this because it's nice to find malware. So let me go look at mine where I was able to download some malware. It got a malware disposition, but it didn't download. I'm just kind of looking through here. So this is pretty common. This is what I would see at my customers under here. Now the file events, and while that's running, we can run out and on mine here, we can see this is different. This came back from the cloud as malware. If I click on this, it basically just takes me down here, which is fine. We'll go ahead and take a look at that. Oops, I want to go here. Well, here's one here that has malware here, and this is in the file events. But you see, one of the things I wanted to show you is there's not a period in there. So if I click on this, it says, hey, we saw this as malware, but we didn't download the file. So you want to look as there's a little dot inside there. It says, hey, we got the file. And then the reason you want the file is you can send it to your sandbox. We can send it up to Talos. We can do more network analysis on here. So this is going to tell me who the hosts were that have this, right? Let me just come back here and see if I can get more information. I could look at the actual captured files. That'd be good. But in this case here, gosh, notice this is real slow and this hasn't come back yet. The file trajectory not coming back for me. Nothing fast on this malware screen. All right, hurry up and wait. Let's see if this guy worked. Oh, there we go. Okay, this isn't great as an output, but it's going to be good enough for me to get through and show you what to do. In this case here, we see that one host had malware and that it was blocked. See that right there, that it was blocked? We might see it come down here as this as well and go to another host and transfer. And that's what I usually see in the dCloud. But any given day, it depends on the AMP Cloud. So in this case here, it's got a disposition of malware. The one thing is I wanted to download the file because now I can download the file here. Now remember, if you guys, when you get through user management, you can change it comes down as a zip file. And user management is a section coming up in this series, and it shows you how to change that password in your user management here. in the user preferences. Anyway, so this is a zip file and it has a password, and the password by default is infected. If I had the file now, I can send it by hand up to Talos, right? The vulnerability research team, now known as Talos. Now I can change the disposition of this file to add it to the clean list or add to the blacklist and say you always get a disposition of malware, right? Because it can change in the AMP cloud, there's no doubt. Now we would watch this in here and then watch who it goes to. In this case, it hasn't done that, right? We had one, and the reason why is because we dropped it every time. And that's been real nice. See what I got here. So now we can see that here's my viewed file. So I went down here to file trajectory here, and let's see what this one shows here. And okay, here, this is great. This is what I want. This is bad. So when you see something like this, okay, what this means is, Sally came in and gave it to Joe. Joe gave it to Bob, to, whatever, it's bad, right? Anyways, so we're going to follow this. And the one thing is it's going to show me the file name. So now I can go call. You don't want to see something like this, but you will. You got to call your help desk and say, go find out Juice Designs and go to, Bob, Sally, Karen, Joe, whatever, and say all of them, gave this to each other. Now, in this case here, I want to show you, now I can download it. So once I download this, it's a zip file. I can open it. It'll ask me for the password, right? Kind of nice. The other thing is I could send this up to Talos. That's fine. I'll click on this and you'll see that go gray. It'll probably come back right away because it already knows this SHA. And the fact but it already knows. Again, I can change the disposition here or the threat. Now, what I want to do is, this is the report I got back from Talos, and it's saying, hey man, this is really bad. So I'm going to click on this and let's take a look at this report and see the bang you get for all the money you spent, right? It takes a couple seconds to open this, but quite a big report here. And what I want to do is say view full report. Most people don't look at these. They see these, it's blocked, right? It's got a disposition of malware. They're not even worried about it. This is why people say, well, I sent it up to Talos, and I'm going to say all these files, and they never go and look at them, right? So in this case, you're going to see lots of behavioral indications, and it's going to give you a lot of information. And look at the confidence scores are real high. So there's quite a bit of information here that we can come through that they give you. And now it's coming from what they call Threat Grid now, right? So very cool stuff. Come through here and manage this. And then again, we can come here and change the disposition of that and then follow these through. And you have to look at all of these. We want to look through and make sure we understand all of them and fix these. If you had AMP for endpoint, this wouldn't have happened, right? It would have stopped on the first one. Somehow this, how did this get in here? Well, Bob and Sales bought a USB, and, we didn't even see it until, it was trying to send out through our box. It has to try to go through the FTD box, right? Okay, great network analysis section. A lot of stuff here. If you go through this every day, let's go back over here and end here. Verify files, send to Talos if needed, or run in your own sandbox. Find out if there's a problem, who has it, and send out, help desk to the users that you feel that have any issues with security intelligence, right? We see something on their desktop where they need user education, where we have IPS. We're going to decide on some sort of action. This is, this is kind of hard. It's not an easy thing to do. It takes some work to do intrusion events, right? And then this, find out if we have malware. Again, blocking malware. If we're blocking it, it's fine. If we have someone inside, we might have to send out help desk.